Marlin deals. Harper hits one to left field deep. On the run is Lyle. Way back to the wall. He leaps. It's gone. Opposite field, 2-run homer. Bryce Harper. And the Phillies in the ninth inning strike again, and they lead it 7-5. Number 18 for Harper the opposite way.
Dave Jagler on the call last night. Was that game in Philadelphia? Bryce Harper homers in the ninth inning, capping a rally from 5 runs down to win 10-5. It is their third consecutive game winning in the top of the ninth, taking the lead, in the top of the ninth, because it was actually a game at Nats Park, even though it sounded like it was a game in Philadelphia. That happens a lot when the Phillies and the Mets are in town. I think most of you know that. But Bryce Harper with a big night for the Phillies. Harper was 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs, including that big 2-run homer that gave the Phils a 7-5 lead in the ninth. The Nats bullpen, disastrous. Absolutely disastrous. If they fix that, if they can, everything else seems to work pretty well. I mean, they can score some runs, and they score runs early. I mean, they've had leads over the Phillies for 3 straight nights and given it up with horrific late bullpen appearances. The Nats back to 500 after their 3rd straight loss to the Phils. They'll be in Baltimore this weekend starting tonight. Good morning. We've got a few guests on the show today. Chase Hughes is going to jump on with us in about 30 minutes to talk about the Wizards' big week. A.J. DeBonsa yesterday was introduced to the media, and he had more to say about his comparison to Len Bias. We will get to that. The soccer team, the U.S. soccer team, lost last night, but not hurtful. This was kind of a meaningless game for the most part. Ben's going to jump on at 12, and Chris Russell will join me before his show starts at 1 o'clock. I played golf yesterday, Max, and I was in the men's grill having a pop or two afterwards, and I had 2 different people come up to me and say, Russell, the guy that follows you, was killing you. I said, about what? And they said, it was something having to do with Brandon Ayuk. So I just texted Chris, and I said, Chris, I'd like you to come on today. And he said, sure. Do you know what he was killing me about? They really couldn't articulate the specifics.
I didn't hear. I mean, I've seen a lot of the waves that Chris Russell has been making on social media in the last 24 hours.
What's he been doing? Give me what he's been doing on social media.
He's just commenting about Brandon Ayuk and giving his take, and a lot of people are very vocal in their disagreement on how hard he's going.
Doesn't he have 3 hours a day to give that opinion?
Did, and
but he's also doing it. You're telling me on Instagram.
He put out a tweet yesterday saying that if they bring in Brandon Ayuk, he's officially turning his back on Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, and the current Commanders regime.
He's officially turning his back.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? How does that actually play out?
Listen,
no, you can't come on my show every day like you do.
Gonna have to ask
him. How does that actually play out when he says he's turning his back on everybody? He's not even a fan of the team, is he?
See, I call him a Giants fan all the time, but he doesn't like that very much.
Is he a Giants fan? I know he is a big Islanders fan. That's what I've known about Chris forever.
Well, Chris is a Long Island guy.
Islanders are definitely his passion.
Of course.
Yeah. So what was so he's turning his back if they sign Brandon Ayuk?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, he's put his foot down. We'll find out more, but I still don't know how that relates to me. Is it because I've said if they end up signing him, I'll be okay with it?
Here's the tweet. Well, you guys all love and respect Kevin Sheehan while you hate me for my strong opinions. Here's Kevin saying he's officially changed his mind on Brandon Ayuk after months of advocating for it. So I think you're changing your mind now, and he's been staunch in his denial of bringing in Brandon Ayuk in.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, yes. Let me just tell you, the latest video might have me changing my mind
I'm back in.
It was hysterical.
It was really funny.
It was by far and away his best social media video because there was a little bit of self-deprecation in there, but it was I think it's the only one in which he has not ripped his former employer. We'll play it for you coming up here shortly. Yes, on the show yesterday, I did say after the few videos and another sort of non-support video from somebody that would be much closer to the situation, this time Richard Sherman, that he might be veering off the path of an opportunity here. And that would be my guess as to how it could be going in Ashburn. And for me, I just don't want somebody who clearly doesn't have a desire right now, it would appear, to put football number one. And Stephon Diggs appears to be putting football number one. So even though I do believe in Brandon Ayuk, the player, and that's what's always been, look, if this guy was just okay, obviously we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I think it's interesting because many of you, even from the beginning, when it became possible that Brandon Ayuk might be let loose or traded. I forget how the early conversations went on Ayuk. I don't think it was ever about getting traded. I know some people thought he would get traded, but the contract pretty much dictated that it was not going to happen. No one was going to trade for him. They were going to pick him up and do hopefully a 1-year kind of a prove-it deal. But I remember a lot of people saying, why would they want Brandon Ayuk? And I think now, at least over the last couple of months, with everybody that's weighed in on this, football people, and the fact that, you know, we believe Washington has had interest. I don't know if they still have interest. I don't know what the thinking is out there today, because it can change. It may have a week ago or 2 weeks ago been, yeah, unless the medical really shows something scary, if he becomes available, we're really going to seriously consider it. They may think differently after the social media barrage and the fact that, you know, he's got them too much in his mouth. And look, you know, for Adam Peters, and Tommy pointed this out to me on the podcast yesterday, and it's a really good point. You know, if you sign Brandon Ayuk Brandon Ayuk stayed silent. I mean, we didn't hear from him until after June 1st. That's when these videos started. And I think, you know, the idea is he thought post June 1 he might get released. And once he didn't, he's gone scorched earth on the 49ers. But if you signed him without all of what's happened over the last couple of weeks, it's not that big of a deal. You know, yes, there is the $30 million that he had voided. There's a big red flag on that relationship with the 49ers. But without the craziness, and the, you know, kind of attacking of former employer video barrage, you know, Adam Peters can say, we're going to give it a look-see and give him a try. No risk, really. And ownership's like, sure. But now ownership's got to say, hey, Adam, we've watched all these videos. We've seen the way he's discussed his employer and sort of the odd way in which he's gone about it. You better be right. There's a little bit more pressure on Adam Peters now signing a Brandon Ayuk when, you know, if he had continued to lay low, it would have been less of an issue. But the latest video is by far his best. Do you have that teed up and ready to play?
Of course I do.
Yeah. So this was out yesterday afternoon or last night?
This was yesterday around like 3 o'clock, I want to say.
So this was after the closet and the
Yes,
knapsack and all of the money falling out. Him
Correct.
ripping the money. Okay, let's get to this one. Let me just describe. He's in kind of a hallway, and he's in a T-shirt, jeans. He's wearing a Commander's hat, the W burgundy hat, and here's what he said.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Beaky. I'm back in action and back on tour this fall. Go to www.commanders.com to get your tickets and watch us rock out.
Now that's creative.
Really funny.
That's funny. And in the movements he's making, it's like a concert promotion. Hey, we're back on tour. We're back at it. We're coming to a theater near you soon. Get your tickets at www. I love the fact that he put the www in there. WashingtonCommanders.com.
World Wide Web.
Nothing about how stupid his employer is, how much he's fleeced them, how much they capping. We're not getting that in this video. We're getting something more creative. So maybe he really is pulling the wool over everybody's eyes. No, I doubt that. I do find that interesting. I had somebody say to me yesterday, because a lot of feedback whenever I get out amongst the people. Kidding, of course. But I did get a lot of Brandon Ayuk yesterday. And somebody said, I think this dude's just completely playing chess to everybody else's checkers. I'm like, really? Why? And he said, because he's forcing the 49ers. He's driving them crazy, and they're going to just eventually release him. Yeah, see, but if he were really playing chess and if football were really number one in his mind, he'd already be in Washington, signed, or somewhere else. Because according to Jeremy Fowler and others, he hasn't even applied for reinstatement with the commissioner, which he has to do. Like this, there's a process here for him to return. And he's had that opportunity. He could have done that and shown up for OTAs and really forced the 49. He could be in Washington, not in Washington today because they're off until training camp, but he could have been here a lot earlier. Now, it's possible the 49ers would have said, hey, applied for reinstatement. The commissioner granted it. He's off the reserved left squad list. He's in shape. He's participating in OTAs. We're still not going to cut him. We're still going to wait until the very end of training camp. We might even play him in some preseason games to see if he plays well, and maybe we can get, a seventh rounder for him or something like that. Or we just don't want any competitor to have him for an entire offseason. I still think that that's been in the back of their minds in terms of competitive advantage lost by turning him loose. But for him, what he can control on the chessboard is, he's just moving pawns around. He's got to get his queen loose, and he's got to apply for reinstatement and then really legitimately force the 49ers to look at the board and decide what they want to do. I think that's been, for me, I can't speak for all of you, the most frustrating thing is that the talent is tantalizing. If the knee is fine, if he's in shape, if he's not that far from shape, do it. Apply for reinstatement. Go in there and tell them you want to be released. And if they're not releasing you, show up every day. Have the questions being fired at you every day and about you while they're actually trying to get work done. Maybe that'll force their hand. But he hasn't shown at this point with action that he has football on his mind, other than promoting for this upcoming fall tour of the Washington Commanders, www.washingtoncommanders.com. We're coming back. We're back on tour. And here he comes. That's the other thing, too. I can't imagine they're thrilled with this implied messaging from him that a deal is already done with Washington. Now, if they haven't tampered and they haven't been in contact with him, and this is all in his mind or in his belief based on that's where he wants to go and he's good enough, so if he wants to go there, they're going to want him. That's one thing, and I'm sure that's a big part of it. But, it does raise eyebrows, I'm sure, about the assumption that that deal's already done in the way he presents it. But at least this one was not the 49ers are stupid. They capping, cut me. Y'all, I took $50 million from you. I basically fleeced you. You're dumb. You're stupid. That hasn't worked yet. What might work, and I would just suggest that he try, is to apply for reinstatement with the commissioner. That would be an indication that football is near top of mind. That doesn't seem that hard. Apply for reinstatement, Brandon. Go to the commissioner. Tell him you want back in. You're healthy. You're getting in shape. And you're going to be there for the beginning of training camp when the 49ers go to camp. Make them the bad guy. You haven't done that. That's checkers. You haven't yet made them look like they're the bad guy. They can't do anything right now. You're not even in the league technically right now. You're on an AWOL, MIA list, basically, because that's what you did. So get off that list and show up. Start talking about football. Tell us you want to really play football, and that's the priority. Did like this video, though. And he does a little move at the end that's really smooth. This one's short, too. It's not, 40 seconds. What are we going to get today? More ticket promotion, maybe.
It'll all come after
Is
1 o'clock. I know that.
Is the opener against Seattle sold out? That's the home opener, week 3.
I don't know if they've made any sellout announcements yet.
Let me just say, there are tickets available. Season tickets are available because I get pitched all the time, getting stuff from them all the time. So season tickets are available. I would assume one-offs are available for individual games. But I think by the time we certainly get to the Seattle opener, that game will be sold out. I actually, from a schedule standpoint, didn't really focus on the home schedule because there is, a certain level of having better opponents gives you a better chance to sell out every game. Seattle is the first home game, followed by, the Indy game's in London. Then you get the Giants, Eagles, man, that Rams game, come on. Cincinnati game with Burrow, Houston, Atlanta late in the year, and, of course, Dallas. They have 8 true home games. The 9th home game is the London game against the Indianapolis Colts. So, more on Ayuk coming up. We'll talk to Ben about Ayuk. We'll talk to Chris Russell, obviously, about Ayuk at the end of the show. And, we don't need to take calls again for a second straight day on how you feel about Brandon Ayuk. I'm where I was yesterday. The nature of the video, which was a much more entertaining and made him look a little bit more with it and at least a tinge of self-deprecation and having fun, hasn't changed my mind that at this point, I think they should move on Diggs. If, by the way, they are hell-bent on adding another receiver. Now, Diggs doesn't fit like Ayuk does. Ayuk fits perfectly if you're getting Ayuk from 2023. Perfectly. And that's the part that still, if they ultimately do it, I'm going to be on board with it because they have a lot more information than we have. All right. Hit the what do you got, sounder? If you missed this from over the weekend, I actually think this is really exciting and great for the sport. Serena Williams is going to play singles at Wimbledon. She accepted a wild card entry into the Grand Slam. She's also going to compete in doubles with her sister, Venus Williams. Serena is 44. Venus just turned 46 years old. This is part of this tennis comeback that she announced about a month and a half ago, that started with some doubles warm-up matches, but will kick into high gear this weekend at the All England Club when Wimbledon gets underway. Her opponent in the first round, Maya Joint of Australia, she's 20 years old. 20. Maya Joint is currently the number 53 ranked player in the world, so this is not a seeded player that she's going to face. I would bet you that Serena ends up being a favorite in this match. I could be way off. I can't wait to see the odds on her first round match. I think Serena Williams is one of the great competitors in the history of sports, period. In terms of individual sports, she's one of the great competitors of all time. She was always different than her sister, who was a great tennis player. But Serena, and the father knew it, Richard Williams knew it, and the coaches early on, if you've seen the movie King Richard, they knew it. Serena was the killer. And she really always has been. I'm looking forward to it. That, to me, is going to be must watch. I hope her first round match isn't during this radio show so that I can sit down and watch it and see what Serena looks like. You know, she's lost a lot of weight, obviously on one of those weight loss drugs. And so we'll see whether or not she's in good enough shape to play singles. The doubles seemed pretty obvious. you can play doubles when you're a professional tennis player until a much older age. It's much easier on the body. We'll see if she's able to win a round or two. That would be really exciting. I think that tennis needs something like that. It's crazy, but on the women's side, I think it needs something like Serena coming back. Is women's tennis right now with Sabalenka and I know Coco Gauff is a real, American favorite, and I love watching her play and rooting for her to play. But and what's the Bills owner's daughter? The Buffalo Bills owner, what's his name? Pegula, right? Jessica Pegula.
Yes, Pegula.
She's been ranked in the top 5 for a long time. I don't think she's won a major yet, though. I think she's been in a major final. Coco Gauff's won a major. Am I right about that? Pretty sure she has. Pegula, I don't think has won a major.
Coco's got 2. The U.S.
Coco's
Open
got 2. So she won a U.S. Open.
She
And
beat
then what was the
Sabalenka
other one?
twice. Good for her.
She's won the Open twice?
U.S. Open 23, French Open 25.
Got it. When we were talking earlier in the week about Darren Peterson and, we had that guest on from CBS Sports, Adam Finkelstein, who said that he thought the lead was buried in a story written by Ramona Shelburne on ESPN.com back in early May, when he said the story's headlines and the first few paragraphs were about the high dosages of creatine, which Darren Peterson and his camp believed may have been the reason that he was suffering from the cramping. But Adam pointed out that really the lead of the story should have been his traumatizing emergency room visit 2 months before the season began, something that Darren Peterson himself described as frightening, terrifying, and something that affected him the rest of the year, that he was scared of getting into that condition again and did everything he could to avoid it. And the condition was a full body cramp where he needed fluids. They couldn't give it to him on the Kansas training table because they couldn't find a vein. He's screaming, call 911, call 911, I'm dying. They rush him to the emergency room. They're able to find a vein in the emergency room and they rehydrate him. But from that moment on, he was terrified. And he talked about feeling like he didn't want to be put in that spot again where he could have to be, carted off the floor, rushed in an ambulance to the emergency room because it would be embarrassing. So there was a lot of, this is projection, not by, a certified medical professional. I grant you that. But there was clearly a lot of avoidance of this fear of a physical ailment. And I had a psychologist, I forget the guy's name from earlier in the week, I want to say it was Daryl, who said, this guy's suffering from a major anxiety-related issue or panic attack syndrome. And the reason I just thought of that again is that Coco Gauff admitted that she has had panic attacks during matches. And that could be the issue with Darren Peterson. By the way, like I said earlier this week, if that is the actual issue with him, it doesn't make it easier to draft him because it could be a psychological, hurdle for him to overcome. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm excited about Serena playing at Wimbledon and playing singles. One of my, maybe my top 5 21st century favorite athlete for me is Serena. I'd probably put Kawhi Leonard into that group. Probably have to put Kirk Cousins into that group. I'll think about some of the others. But she's definitely in that group. And she's going to be playing Wimbledon and facing somebody literally less than half her age. 20 years old. Or more than half her age. Yeah, more than half her age would be the correct way to describe it. No, less than half her age would be the correct way to describe it. Yes, less than half her age. She's 20, Serena's 44. And I would imagine the Williams sisters will have a shot at doubles, not to win it, but to win some rounds. All right. When we come back, Chase Hughes will jump on with us. We'll talk about the week that was for the Wizards. Very exciting week. And some of the things that he believes A.J. DeBonce is capable of and how he'll fit when we get to the opener in late October. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Don't forget you can watch this show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. So the U.S. played their final Group D, preliminary stage match. It was not a big match for them because they had already clinched the top spot in their group, and they lost to Turkey with the last second kick. Is that what we just heard in one of those updates?
Yeah.
Somebody pronounce it Turkey?
Yeah, I did.
It's Turkey.
We're losing the plot here.
Well, it is spelled Turkey, and so, but it's still Turkey, right? Or am I wrong?
It's the official
This
name
is
of the
country with Istanbul. This, which by the way, people love. I've never been. People say it's a great
my
city.
parents love that place.
But that's who they lost to last night, Turkey.
Correct.
Despite some people pronouncing it Turkey, which maybe they're right and I'm wrong.
The authentic Turkish spelling and pronunciation. The Turkish government prefers this name because it better represents their culture, history, and national identity. It is officially used in international diplomacy, foreign documents, and global sporting events.
The spelling or the pronunciation?
It says spelling and pronunciation.
Wow.
So
okay.
we are wrong.
The U.S. lost to Turkey on the final kick of the game last night. 8th minute of what they call stoppage time. 98th minute of the game. They lose 3-2. It doesn't matter. I don't think it affected where they end up playing. You can tell me if I'm wrong. They are still going to play
Bosnia.
Bosnia on July 1st, 8 o'clock. Do we know where that game is?
I'm looking. I can't find a location yet.
Okay. So USA, Bosnia in the first, not in one of the first knockout games, round of 32 in the World Cup. And at this point, I can't tell who they'll play the winner of. It looks like it would be the 1 seed of Group G. Group G is Egypt, Iran. Oh, my God, a second-round matchup with possibly Iran? Are you serious? Is that a possibility?
Political. Looking at the bracket, it appears that it is.
Yes. The one seed out of Group G plays opposite the U.S. And right now, Egypt is the 1, but Iran's 2 with still 1 game left. Maybe they could end up being the 1.
They play each other.
That's interesting.
Lock in tonight, Seattle. It's going to be, 10 o'clock kick, I think?
Let me just tell you something. I don't know if the U.S. wants to play Iran in Los Angeles. Hopefully that second-round game, if the U.S. advances to the round of 16, if there's a U.S. versus Iran game, because did you see when Iran played their first game in L.A.?
Yeah, they packed that thing out.
Apparently more Iranians, and many of them from 1979, fleeing Iran, they landed in Beverly Hills. Literally in Westwood, in Beverly Hills. It's the largest Iranian population of any city in America. And that stadium, SoFi, for their first game was ridiculous. I was very surprised by it. They were playing New Zealand, I think it was. That would be pretty wild. You don't want that game at SoFi. You want that game in Texas. You want that game in Houston or in Dallas, if the U.S. can even get there. That's a big assumption, right? Although, what's Bosnia done? Is Bosnia any good?
They are ranked. What are they ranked right now in terms of the world? I'm looking.
Not quickly enough.
Yeah, it's taking
too much dead air there.
Yeah, they're ranking 62nd in the world.
Okay.
U.S. is
and
top 15.
It looks like their games so far in the World Cup, they beat Qatar 3-1, and then they lost. Oh, I can't tell which games are World Cup games. No, it looks like they lost to Switzerland and then beat Qatar.
They tied Canada. I think that's a friendly to get things ramped up.
That was a friendly.
Yes, and then they lost to Switzerland, beat Qatar,
right.
And yeah.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
Right. All right. We are going to talk to Chase Hughes. We'll do that after these words from a few of our sponsors.
Hi, AJ over here. Chase Hughes of Monumental Sports Network. Welcome to DC. You have a great line, which is "I fill seats," and I'm curious, like, how long has that been the case? When did you start noticing, like, the crowds were changing and people were kind of becoming drawn to you?
I kind of noticed in 8th grade. I reclassed and I did 8th grade twice, and I let me play a varsity as an 8th grader, which is super rare. And for the first time in school history, they like added like the yellow tape for more seats in our gym, and I was like, okay, like this is kind of crazy. Like you're not supposed to be selling tickets at a regular high school, and they're over here selling tickets like for outside commission, and it was kind of crazy. Then, what I really realized it was last year when I played at TD Garden, just coming back home, playing in Boston, and I looked up and all the suites were filled and everything. And I was like, this is kind of crazy, like to be able to fill out, your home arena.
Wow, he played varsity as an 8th grader. That's pretty impressive. By the way, I think no matter what community you are in, if you're a basketball person and an 8th grader's getting elevated to the varsity, not the freshman team, not the JV team, the varsity, everybody wants to see that. So I understand that. That was AJ DeBonsa answering a question from our guy Chase Hughes, who joins us right now. Chase, of course, covers the Wizards and has for a while now for Monumental Sports. You can follow Chase on X at ChaseDC Sports. When do you think, just a hunch if you don't have the specific answer, when do you think they became the Wizards sold and absolutely he was their guy? Did that happen late in the process or earlier in the process? I'm just curious how close Darren Peterson was.
Well, first of all, listening back to that quote, I think we could maybe update the line "I fill seats" to "I fill suites" because he's going to be playing in NBA arenas now. Yeah, I think it was probably a few weeks ago. I had been saying coming out of the combine that it was 50-50, and I think it was a lot closer than people thought on the night of the lottery. They did like Darren Peterson, and they liked Cam Boozer, and they had to do their due diligence. But as we got close to the draft, it seemed unrealistic that they hadn't made it. I think it was probably several weeks ago after they were in the building and we're able to sit down with them and really get to know them because, as Will Dawkins says, they draft people, not players, and that's a really important part of what they do.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I can't imagine that it wasn't, from a basketball evaluation standpoint, close. But yeah, of course, they draft people as well. And ultimately, do you think just a lot of the smoke around Darren Peterson just made him almost a non-starter?
I think it's more about the Bonsa, and as much as these guys were close, I think the way that Will Dawkins framed it the night of the draft, something along the lines of like, it's hard to talk yourself out of a guy like this. If the ceilings are similar skill set wise, they're both unbelievable offensive talents. Then you see what the guy did at the combine. I'm talking about DeBonsa. He's legitimately one of the most athletic prospects we've ever seen test at the combine. And then I don't know how you really poke holes whatsoever in terms of his intangibles. He's got this huge personality, but he's also very clearly very serious about the game. I know some has been made about his offensive play style, but when you really dive into it, he plays the right way. I mean, he's an appreciably better passer, I think, than Darren Peterson. I think Cam Boozer probably was the best passer at the top of the draft. But if you really watch DeBonsa, he's a very talented playmaker. And the first time I started to notice that was when he was toward the end of his high school career, and it was in showcase games like the McDonald's All-American game. And I'm like, this guy's playing the right way in a game where it's usually just a free-for-all. And I remember just, checking the box score at the end of those games and realizing, like, he didn't necessarily jump off the screen, but he just filled up the box score and, was making the right reads. So I think there was just, when you really dived into it, you just couldn't find really any reason not to take the guy.
You said something, and it sparked something for me, because When the Skins drafted Sonny Styles, he had the best combine workout ever for a linebacker. And I said after that draft, I'm like, he's a really good athlete, but I don't think he is the athlete that the Indy Combine results reflect. Like, he's not going to be just one of the fastest, hardest hitting, most athletic, like a Sean Taylor like. But he's athletic, but it's not what it is based on the Indy Combine. And I feel that way about A.J. Devonta. When you just said, he's one of the best tested athletes ever, I don't see him as Dominique Wilkins or Michael Jordan, or even like in recent years, people like Russell Westbrook. I see him as athletic, don't get me wrong, but I see him much more as a crafty, methodical at times, getting to his spots, hitting the mid-range, versus the truly explosive athlete at that position. Do you agree or disagree?
I think I agree if I picking up what you're putting down, because his numbers surprised me. I mean, as I watched him, the thing that jumped out most was just the skill, the offensive feel. I mean, he's so bendy and flexible and shifty, and the way he moves in the mid-range. There's no secret why he averaged about 8.5 free throw attempts per game last year. Had the most free throw attempts of any player in Division I, drew the second most shooting fouls, had the most and ones. Like, this guy is really hard to stay in front of. He's really shifty. He's extremely good at getting to the free throw line. So when I say most athletic prospects at the Combine, I think I can take that a little bit further and say most athletic top prospects at the Combine, because usually when you see guys put up numbers like he did, they don't know how to shoot. They don't know how to dribble. You're bringing in a guy and you're just hoping that you can sort of mold him into a basketball player. This is a basketball player that once he went to the Combine, you start to see the hard data that there are ways this guy has, separation from your average, even elite athlete at the NBA level. This guy's a 1%er, and he's got the skill set, and he's got the intangibles, and he happens to have a big personality. So there's just so many boxes that he checks off.
Yeah, I just think people, our fans that maybe didn't watch him a lot at BYU, when they hear that, I think, to me, he's more skilled than he is athletic. Like, this isn't Vince Carter. This isn't, Dr. J. This isn't Blake Griffin, for, a bigger guy. But it's not that he's unathletic. No, he is athletic. It's just not like the explosive, like that's what we're going to be talking about every night. He's not going to be, more likely than not, the highlight reel for dunks and acrobatic plays. I think the skill level there, the IQ is there, and that's I think sometimes when you hear those athletic numbers, people overlook that part of it. All right, how does he fit in? Tell me right now. Let's fast forward to the middle of next season, and let's just say that Trae Young and Anthony Davis are not only on the team, but they're thriving because they are healthy. The team is in the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. Give me your starting five and how it shakes out.
Starting five, Trae Young at the 1. I'd put Keyshawn George at the 2, Devonta at the 3, AD at the 4, and Alex Sarr at the 5. And for me, it's just a question, if Devonta is in the starting lineup, we'll see. I think it makes a lot of sense if he is in there. He's so talented. I think it's what do you want to put next to him and Trae Young? And I think Keyshawn George is the best combination of size, physical defense, and also offensive talent that they have among their young players at this point. So I think he's the type of guy who could play on the ball. He could play off the ball. He could complement Trae Young and Devonta very well on both ends of the floor. He can catch and shoot from 3. And really, it's about the defense. I mean, Trae Young, very talented offensive player. Devonta, very talented offensively. Devonta has got to improve defensively. He'll tell you that. Keyshawn George gives you something that you just have to have, which is someone who can disrupt things on the perimeter, who can switch. And so I think he makes a lot of sense. But, Trey Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, I think there's a couple other players who would be options for that role. But Keyshawn George, even though he's 6'8", maybe 6'9", yes, he is a 2 guard. He's played over a third of his minutes in the NBA so far at the 2. He grew up playing guard before a growth spurt. So that is a reality of his game. He can play in that position.
Tell me what your thoughts are about Anthony Davis in terms of his desire to be here, the possibility of a contract extension in August, and what it looks like moving forward with this organization.
Well, I feel more confident saying that he's going to be part of this team next year just because lately we've heard on the record both from Michael Winger and Will Dawkins expressing confidence in that. And Will Dawkins took it a little bit further, saying in an ESPN interview that, there is the possibility of extension talks in August. We'll see where that goes. I like the fit in terms of, especially on the defensive end, if he is healthy. The Wizards last year, I think, saw tremendous gains from Alex Sarr as a rim protector, but they still had one of the worst defenses in the league.
Right.
So, he's not quite at the point where, it's like a Rudy Gobert situation where just put him on the court and it doesn't matter who's out there, you're going to have a top 10 defense. So I think having two rim protectors could be strength in numbers. Perhaps it could look a little bit like Cleveland with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And so I think that pushes the ball down the field a little bit in terms of their defense. And that's going to be really, really important. I mean, I feel pretty confident that their offense can take a big step forward with Trae Young in the mix. The defense is a bit of a question mark, and it's really important if you want to win really throughout the history of the NBA, but especially when you get to the playoffs, you're not really going to go very far unless you can defend.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Chase, and I know we've probably talked about this before, but if they're going to make a big jump in this first year of trying to win games in the last 3 years, and they're going to go from 17 to, say, 42, 43, play-in territory, 6 or 5 seed, it's going to be because Anthony Davis played 65, 70 games. It's not going to be because A.J. DeBonsa is the rookie of the year. That's not going to translate into that kind of a turnaround. I mean, Cooper Flagg was the rookie of the year and had a phenomenal rookie season. Dallas won 26 games. To me, it's all about AD, him being here, him being healthy, and him playing like he is capable of playing. And then a big turnaround, a big one-year turnaround is in play. Agree or disagree?
I agree. I would add to that the young players, the recent high draft picks, excluding DeBonta, I absolutely agree. First year, he could be incredible. And it's, he's going to have to learn how to win. I mean, I could add Victor Wembanyama to that conversation. Sure. These guys, it usually takes them a few years. But you look at like Trey Johnson, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Will Riley, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, these guys that were drafted because they have high ceilings. We saw last year with Keyshawn George and Alex Sarr in particular, a couple guys make significant steps forward and all of a sudden the picture changes quite a bit. And they got a lot of those guys. So I think if you get 2 or 3 of them to make leaps that were similar to what we saw from Keyshawn and Alex last year, that could change the outlook quite a bit and add a lot of wins to their win total. But certainly the health of Anthony Davis is paramount because of how much he could impact not only the defense, but the offense too. I mean, this guy is a very talented scorer as well.
All right. I didn't ask you about Okpara. What did you make of the second round pick?
Yeah, I mean, it was not surprising that they packaged their 2 draft picks for a 2-for-1. They're kind of running out of roster spots to a certain degree. And I think it makes sense to get sort of a physical defensive big man. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get another one in free agency. And, the fact that he's very big, he's got a high motor. He's about 240 pounds. He's going to be the second heaviest player on the team next to Anthony Davis. I think that's actually quite crucial. This was the lightest team in the league in terms of average weight last year and the year before. I think he could develop into someone who could take on some of those bigger defensive matchups. And, looking long term, that's going to be really important. Look at the complexion of the Eastern Conference. The New York Knicks, Detroit Pistons, Boston Celtics, Orlando Magic, teams like that, they're very physical. And they have a bunch of guys on their team that, look like they could play for the Commanders. And the Wizards are trying to develop their young players into more physical guys. I think they got someone who's got a good starting point because he's very big and he's very physical and he's got a good motor and he blocks shots, but he can also switch. So they're very excited about his defensive ceiling.
All right, one more, because I know you got to go. You're hosting the press conference for the announcement of Felix Okpara today.
That's right.
And so just tell me what you think happens with Jaylen Brown in Boston.
It sounds like he's going to be traded, doesn't it? I mean, I'm pretty surprised by that. I think I was on the radio with you and I said he's going to be in Boston next year because it just seems so unlikely that a guy could have a breakout year like that. And be traded. I mean, he's a all NBA player, tremendous player. A huge reason why they had a surprise season. But it does seem like both sides are motivated based on reports for a split. So we'll see where he goes, and we'll see how it works out. Oftentimes these guys who are, quote unquote, second fiddle and want to go elsewhere. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener, but tremendous player, and it just seems like there's momentum behind him going elsewhere.
You know what, Chase? I think we talked about this before. I don't think I would have traded him for Giannis. You're never going to get something back for Jaylen Brown if you're Boston right now that's going to be better than Jaylen Brown. It's talk him into staying, talk him into at least functioning with Jason Tatum. They won a title together, for crying out loud. I don't get this one at all. All right, good luck today. Appreciate you making time for me.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Chase Hughes, everybody. By the way, AJ DeBonsa answered a question yesterday about his comparison to Len Bias. You'll hear what he said when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
Which NBA player are you most like, but no one compares you to?
Wow, that's a good one. I never got that question before. You want some real ball knowledge?
Give it to me.
He never played in the NBA, but he got drafted. Len Bias.
Ball knowledge is what he was saying. You want some real ball knowledge? That was the other night after the draft. AJ DeBonsa saying that is the one that no one ever comps me to. Well, he was asked about that yesterday during his introductory press conference about comparing himself to a player who wasn't only a legend around these parts, but his legends lived on many, many years, 40 now, in fact, after his death in all basketball circles. Here's what he said, elaborating on that comparison.
AJ, you have said that you compare a lot of your skill set to Len Bias. What specifically do you see in your game that reminds you of Len Bias in that way? As a Maryland alum over here, I was intrigued by that.
Yeah, he got to his midi. And I take huge pride in getting to my midi. I think it's a great shot for me. Obviously, getting into the NBA, there's a lot of footers now. There's a lot of shot blockers now. So to be able to get to that midi and just raise up at 6'9", I think is very helpful for me. So I started watching this film like probably a couple months ago. Just pulled up on TikTok, and I just seen him. I was like, I don't know who this is. They said he was going to be better than Michael Jordan. I don't know. But, I started watching this film, and I could see him get into his midi a lot.
There you go. So he sees the comparison in the mid-range jump shot. Yeah. I mean, I see a comparison to Kevin Durant in the mid-range, the way he gets to it, and the way he uses, wingspan and height to shoot over people. No one could rise like Len Bias could. Nobody shot it at a higher apex than he did. I mean, his fingertips extended. That thing was way up there. I mean, we're talking level with the rim when that thing released. And he was a deadly shooter for the time. And, of course, no three-pointer in college basketball during his time at Maryland. But had he come into the NBA and had three-point shooting been more of an emphasis, he would have developed into a very good stretch, if they played small ball back then, stretch four. I mean, he would have really been a difficult cover. But like I said the other day, the comps to Bias are always based on people saying that he would have been the next Jordan. And to me, for years, whenever this has come up, I have said Jordan's the wrong comp. Dominique Wilkins is the correct comp. Dominique Wilkins was a forward. That's what Len Bias was. Michael Jordan was a shooting guard, a two-guard. And Michael Jordan had a much better handle, even as a young player, even as a college player, than Leonard ever had. That was the one thing that you could say was a weakness. Everything else was A+. Shooter, dunker, defender by the time he became a senior, shot blocker, rebounder, the whole thing. He could shoot it from distance, and you didn't shoot it a lot from distance back then, but it was as pure a jump shot as there was in college basketball, and it would have been sensational at the pro level as well. And just athletically, he was on a different planet. I mean, I know AJ DeBonsa, all due respect to him, tested very well, but like I was saying with Chase, that it doesn't necessarily play out where you're seeing this incredibly explosive, high-flying, dunker. Len Bias would have been Dominique Wilkins, Sean Kemp-like in the NBA. I mean, there would have been, still to this day, just like you see with Neek and Dr. J and Sean Kemp and Vince Carter, some of the greatest dunkers in the history of the game. That's what you would have been watching today of Len Bias in a Celtics uniform. You would have seen just some of the sickest aerial acts you've ever seen in the history of the game. He was that kind of ridiculous leaper, quick leaper, and very, very strong finisher. I mean, one of my favorite things about Len Bias was he didn't just dunk. He tried to dunk and drill a hole in the floor with the ball after it went through, which is what Dominique Wilkins did, Sean Kemp did, and others. That's not his game. But I think the mid-range stuff, yeah, probably comparable. Again, we talked about this the other day, but for me, a caller called in and said Paul George. I think that's a good comp. I think that's actually an excellent comp. And I'm not saying he's Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant's an all-time great, and an all-time great shooter, but stylistically in the way they get to their mid-range, it's similar. And I think he's very good with the ball in his hands, creating for a 6'9" player. I think he'll be fine as a catch-and-shoot guy. I think he's going to become an excellent three-point shooter. I mean, you can see it in the stroke. And he's had some big games. What really drove down the percentages, three-point shooting percentage, to 33 was a couple of really bad games from behind the arc where he had several attempts. And I'm sure if you went back and watched those games, they were halfway down and out, or they were just long or just short. You know, the best shooters are always long or short, you know, not right or left. And I think the stroke's fine, and I think he's going to be good as a shooter. I do. All right, I wanted to get to something here in this hour. Ben Solak, who writes at ESPN.com, early this morning put out a story about all of the NFL coordinators, new NFL coordinators. And he wrote about 10 of them. But listen to this, because I've talked about how there's been a massive turnover in coordinators this offseason, and a lot of new coordinators as well. He writes he writes there are 64 offensive and defensive coordinator positions in the NFL. More than half of them have turned over this season. The total count is 35 new coordinators this year. 21 new offensive coordinators in the NFL. 21 out of 32 teams. 21 new offensive coordinators and 14 new defensive coordinators. He said the turnover in the league has never been greater as expectations rise higher and faster than ever before, produce quickly or make room for the next guy. He writes, it's not hard as such to find 10 new coordinators with big questions approaching the 2026 season. Sean Mannion has the fate of quarterback Jalen Hurts in his hands in Philadelphia. Eric Bieniemy needs to bring something, anything new to the Chiefs' stale offense. Jonathan Gannon has to solve a Packers defense without star edge rusher Micah Parsons long enough to stay in the playoff hunt. He writes, but none of them made the list of the top 10. But the top 10 who did have Super Bowl aspirations hanging in the balance of their efforts, those are the 10 he focused on. And he did write parenthetically, okay, maybe not the Browns and Commanders. I would hope that our chances of reaching the postseason and being a threat are better than Cleveland's. We'll see. Still, the stakes are high for these newcomers, a couple of whom will become the Clint Kubiak it will become the Clint Kubiak of this upcoming season. So out of the 10 coordinators that have the most questions about them, 2 of those 10 are Washington's coordinators, both offense and defensive coordinators. Washington's the only team that has both coordinators in his top 10 in terms of question marks. And I'm going to read to you what he said about both David Blau and Durante Jones. I'll start with Blau. Ben Solak, ESPN, looking at all of these new coordinators in the NFL, 35 new coordinators out of 64 available positions, 21 of them on the offensive side. By the way, he did not outline or detail how many of them are new, but I think more than half of them, of the coordinators in the NFL of the 35, are actually first-time coordinators, including the 2 in Washington. And he writes about Blau. What does a Cliff Kingsbury / Ben Johnson hybrid offense look like? Exciting alchemy is underway at Washington's facility in Ashburn, Virginia. Commanders head coach Dan Quinn made quite the splash this offseason, replacing veteran coordinator Kingsbury, a respected schemer with head coaching experience who ran a seemingly ideal offense for mobile quarterback Jaden Daniels. With Blau, a 30-year-old assistant quarterbacks coach, on his staff. Blau, who was a practice squad player as recently as 2023, was an assistant for only 2 years under Kingsbury before getting this huge promotion. Blau was quickly snagged by Kingsbury because of the impression he left when Kingsbury coached the Cardinals. During the pandemic-impacted 2020 season, when the Cardinals endured multiple quarterback absences, they signed Blau off the Lions practice squad and started him just 2 weeks later. This was Kingsbury talking about him in 2024, about Blau. Quote, I remember we got him in Arizona for a couple of weeks, and he probably knew the offense better than I did after 2 weeks. I think he's got a chance to move up really quickly in this profession. I wonder if Cliff knew he was hiring his replacement. I think he did. Now, I think he thought he was hiring his replacement once he got back in to a head coaching job position. I'll continue. Ben Solak writes from ESPN.com. Kingsbury is not the only coach on whom Blau left a lasting impression. Chicago Bears head coach Ben Johnson, who saw Blau through the years in Detroit when Johnson was coaching offense and Blau was a player, holds his former reserve quarterback in high esteem. This is Ben Johnson talking about David Blau. Quote, having played quarterback, he's got that inward feel of how to help elevate that position. And I think he'll be able to do that in that play calling role moving forward. I think he'll be one of those guys who gets a head job before you know it. Closed quote. Look, Detroit and other teams started inquiring about David Blau after his first year, 2024, in Washington. And Washington did not give permission for anybody to speak with Blau. And we do now know that if they had kept Kingsbury or if they had hired somebody else, Blau would be gone. He'd be the offensive coordinator, most likely in Detroit. Solak of ESPN continues. These two coaches, Kingsbury and Johnson, provide important schematic influences that will form Blau's offense in Washington, but they run extremely different systems. The Kingsbury offense lives out of the shotgun, 70% last season, fifth highest in the league, and he tries to get the ball out fast. The Johnson offense goes under center. The Bears' 49% shotgun rate last season was fifth lowest in the league and prefers long developing dropbacks. The Kingsbury offense spreads the field out pre-snap and doesn't change the picture much. 24th in motion rate last season. The Johnson offense uses condensed formations to conceal intentions and constantly sends players in motion, 11th in motion rate in 2025. The Kingsbury offense wants to use quick tempo to catch defenses unaware and relies on quick code word play calls to line up fast. The Johnson offense is so wordy that the Bears occasionally had trouble getting out of the huddle in time last season. These are Blau's two main offensive influences, and it's clear he's going to try to marry them somehow for the Commanders. He has spoken openly about getting Daniels under center more to reimagine the running game and build some play-action keepers off the run action, something that was never a priority for Kingsbury. Blau, however, has also spoken about retaining the stress of Kingsbury's no-huddle approach, something that Johnson's long-winded offense never really uses, save for 2-minute drills. The effort is as bold as it is difficult. The product we see in week 1 will not be a finished one, and it's likely Washington's offense improves over the fall, similarly to how the Bears' offense improved under Johnson in year 1. Blau's not an experienced coach, but Quinn has been doing this for a long time and knows how to weather the developmental storm while trusting the process. If Blau can land the plane and blend these two offenses, there's a chance Washington's offense is one of the league's most dangerous down the home stretch. And then he writes to finish up, even if Blau gets the X's and O's part right, the Commanders are still lacking clear receiver options behind Terry McLaurin and are once again employing a committee of mid-tier running backs. The task is tall in Washington, and Quinn made a huge bet on Blau to meet that moment. This might be the coolest thing we see all season. So there are a couple of things about Ben Solak's write-up on the 10 most interesting new coordinator storylines, is that there is an expectation from Solak that there's going to be a true marrying of the two systems, the Kingsbury system and the Ben Johnson system. Keep in mind, too, Kevin O'Connell was an influence for David Blau, and he's talked about that before. I wonder how much of a true marrying almost, implies, it's going to be 50% Kingsbury, 50% Ben Johnson. I don't see that personally. I see that they are not going to be able to completely, discard, some of the Kingsbury stuff because Blau liked some of the Kingsbury stuff. But I think it feels more like an 80-20. It feels more like this is going to be 80% Ben Johnson, 20% Kingsbury. And eventually it may evolve into 100% Ben Johnson. I actually think that offense suits Jaden Daniels better. Now, I think he can excel and flourish and succeed in any offensive system. Obviously, the Kingsbury system, which employed more shotgun, less play action, less motion, more hurry up, he excelled in. Just so everybody knows, that's not the air raid offense. It's not the spread. It's not a college offense. That's not what, the Kingsbury offense at the NFL level is. But it was certainly an offense for a young quarterback coming out of a college system where it was a much easier adaptation offense for Jaden into the NFL. And he can do any of these things, and he can do any of these things at a high level. And let's not, try to rewrite history. Washington's offense in 2024 was a top 3-4 offense by almost any metric, top 5 worst case by any metric. It was unstoppable at times without a great supporting cast. And last year, with all of the injuries, including Jaden Daniels only playing 4 games start to finish throughout the season, it was middle of the pack in most offensive metrics. It wasn't a terrible offense. It wasn't good at times, but it wasn't terrible. But they were working with, 3rd and 4th tier players for much of the season. But I think from the read on this, the one thing that I'd push back on Solak on is it going to be a true marrying of the two systems, or is it really going to be, heavily weighted on the Ben Johnson scheme? I prefer it be that, because I actually think a truly, balanced zone run scheme with some effectiveness in that is going to make Jaden and this offense even more lethal, because play action is something that always helps quarterbacks. Real play action. And Jaden's got great ball handling skills. And I think whether it's under center or it's play action from the shotgun, you can do both, especially out of the pistol. The play action may be a little bit more effective out of the pistol because you turn your back and you mask the football on the fake. But I think that has the possibility to really be the best fit for Jaden's skill set. Again, I think almost any offense would work, and it's obvious that Cliff's offense worked for him, but I think this one's going to work really well also. And I think the other big takeaway from this story is just the idea that this is going to be a work in progress, that, week 1 is not going to be a finished product, but it will improve similar to the way Caleb Williams improved with Ben Johnson during the course of the season. I mean, I hope it doesn't take too long, but it's certainly going to be more wordy. There's certainly going to be changes in terms of how, you get footwork down, etc. I have a feeling it's going to be a smoother transition than people think. But if it is a slow kind of a grind, in developing that offense. Now he's obviously very, bullish that by the, end of the year, it'll be really good. But let me just say that Chicago's offense started slowly, kind of, in the first few weeks of the season, but then they were running off pretty good offensive days by week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. And by the midpoint of the season, they were putting up 40 plus on the Bengals. Now, their defense was terrible. Terrible, terrible. And then we saw what happened in the postseason. I mean, incredible, play by the offense against Green Bay's defense. And then in the snow against the Rams, they had a shot certainly to win. So that's what was written about David Blau in looking at all of these new coordinators and picking Washington as the only team with two super interesting, intriguing, question-laced coordinators, which he wrote about extensively. I'll tell you what he said about Durante Jones when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Ben Solak, ESPN.com, wrote today about all of the new coordinators in the NFL, 35 new offensive coordinators, a record turnover in the NFL this offseason. 21 new offensive coordinators, 14 new defensive coordinators. He didn't do for this story the math on how many of them are new. I'm going to do that. My guess is probably half of them are first-time coordinators, because I know after the David Blau promotion, we kind of went through a few weeks after when everybody had hired everybody, and there was a significant number of new offensive coordinators in the league. Same on the defensive side. So I told you and read from the David Blau write-up, something that he finds, and he concludes this might be the coolest thing we see all season. Which is a summary of how David Blau's marrying of Cliff Kingsbury and Ben Johnson's systems come together. And if they do, Washington could be one of the most dangerous offensive teams down the stretch. I think, again, two big takeaways for me. I wonder how much true marrying there will be. I think there will be a lean, heavily weighted on the Ben Johnson offense versus Cliff's. We'll see. And then I'm hopeful that with a quarterback like Jaden, that we're not waiting half of a season for it to come together. But anytime you install a new offense, there is typically some level of growing pain. So I can't wait to hear the call segments after the Philly and Dallas and Seattle games about how David Blau was a disaster hiring. Now he gets to Durante Jones, who he says, again, out of the 35 new coordinators, there are 10 with really interesting questions and storylines and must be paid attention to. And the only team with 2 coordinators on his top 10 list, Washington. And he writes about Durante Jones, just how Brian Flores are we about to get? I hope we're going to get real Brian Flores. And he writes, if you have any idea what the Commanders' defense is going to look like in 2026, DM me and let me know. Let me in on the secret. Washington has completely retooled its defensive personnel. In free agency, sizable contracts were given to edge rushers Adafe Owe and Caleb Von Chason, linebacker Leo Chenal, safety Nick Cross, and cornerback Amik Robertson. That's 5 potential starters before accounting for their 7th overall pick, linebacker Sonny Styles. I mean, we know this. It is when, people from the league, people who cover the league, start to kind of really get into the details. Like, this has the potential to be a completely different defense. I don't know what that means in terms of how much better it will be. I think we've all discussed it would be hard for it to be worse than it was last year. But yeah, there are 6 potential new starters, and I think up to 8 potential new significant contributors. Ben Solak continues, personnel changes alone would spell a big change from a unit that struggled for team speed and missed tackles under head coach Dan Quinn last season. But Quinn also dramatically changed gears at coordinator, replacing longtime assistant Joe Witt Jr. with Durante Jones. Jones is from everywhere. A longtime college coach, Jones was pulled into the NFL ranks by Joseph when Joseph was the Dolphins' defensive coordinator in 2016. Jones crossed paths with Lou Anarumo and joined him in Cincinnati, then spent a year in Minnesota under Mike Zimmer. By the way, remember when he was introduced, there were 2 or 3 Mike Zimmer mentions. I know I've talked about this in the past, but Mike Zimmer for defensive coaches and even players has always been considered to be elite. Not as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator. He was Marvin Lewis's defensive coordinator with Jay Gruden as the offensive coordinator during some of those, early 2010s decent Cincinnati teams. Then Durante Jones returned to college to coordinate LSU's defense. Then he went back to Minnesota under Ed Donatel first and remained there when Flores got the job. Ed Donatel, by the way, is a Vic Fangio disciple, but has not done well on his own I added that in there. Flores got the job in Minnesota, and that's where he's been the past 3 seasons. As Flores' passing game coordinator, the most immediate and reasonable expectation is that he'll bring Flores' defensive philosophy to the Commanders. Flores' scheme is without question the most unique defensive approach in the league. The Vikings blitzed on 49% of snaps last season by NFL Next Gen stats charting. The next closest team blitzed on 38% of snaps. The difference between the Vikings in second place was as big as the difference between second and 22nd. Did you follow that? The difference between their 49% and the second place 38% of blitz percentage on snaps, that 11% was the same difference between the second most blitzing team at 38% and the team that was 22nd. So the team that was 22nd, 11%, was at 27% of the time. It's not just that Flores blitzes with maniacal abandon. It's that he does it when you're not supposed to, namely on first down. Most defenses blitz on long and late downs when the offense is almost certain to pass. Flores doesn't permit his defense to be so predictable, so he blitzes all downs, all distances. The Vikings blitzed on 56% of first downs last season. The Bucs were second at 38%. And it's not just the blitz unpredictability. The Vikings were also notoriously chaotic in the defensive backfield. We saw that when Washington played at Minnesota. Before Flores coached with Jones, with the Patriots or as the Dolphins head coach, he preferred man coverage across the board behind his all-out pressures. In Minnesota, Flores has become far more accepting of using zones or dropping additional players off the line of scrimmage. More versatile secondary players have brought ever-changing pre-snap pictures. It's hard, if not impossible at times, to digest exactly what the Vikings are up to in coverage. There's no doubt that to some degree, Jones will bring a new commitment to pressure packages in Washington. Even before his stint with Flores, Jones coached with Vance Joseph, Zimmer, Anarumo, all of whom use front alignments and blitz packages of varying styles to dictate to opposing offenses. Jones has been clear about his dappled background this spring and summer, refusing to commit to any individual philosophy for scheming up pressure. Yeah, he shouldn't. He's had all of these different influences. I hope that Flores, though, is the most influential. Similarly, he hasn't committed to a safety shell. The Commanders have been in 2 high shells on 40% of snaps in their 2 seasons under Quinn, well below league average. The Vikings were 2 high on 58% of snaps in the same time frame. Is that the big change Jones will bring to Washington? Quinn went outside of his known coaching tree looking for a schematic shot in the arm. That's the move of a humble coach who is perhaps a little desperate to quickly turn things around. Jones's influence will be apparent everywhere in how the Commanders line up, what they call, when they call it, and how they execute it. What remains unclear is just how hard the Commanders will commit to Jones's defensive version and what exactly his calling card will be. It's a mystery box. I don't know. I think you can go to the personnel that was added, including, by the way, Sonny Styles as a rookie, and get a sense that they are going to be multiple in terms of their fronts, chaotic in their pre-snap looks, especially second and third level. And I would think that the blitz rates are going to be high. Now, the expectation of opponents early in the season until they get the book on Durante Jones is going to be Brian Flores. It's going to be Brian Flores. They're going to be expecting a lot of blitz. They're going to be expecting a lot of blitz on early downs. So there's probably going to be a lot of quick game thrown against Washington. A lot of quick game. Or a lot of max protect, but more likely a lot of quick game. Now, is that what Brian Schottenheimer in the opener will be thinking? Is that what Sean Mannion in week 2 will be thinking? I think in Philadelphia, the big change that is coming is Jalen Hurts, who has played primarily not under center and primarily in a heavy RPO offense, is going to be in a similar, movement in terms of offensive change as Jaden Daniels. Sean Mannion comes from the Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell tree. I mean, I say Kevin O'Connell, he comes off that tree, but he's been with Kevin O'Connell most recently, and then Sean McVay as well. So I don't know. I can't. I was thinking about this. I'm looking forward to seeing what both look like, and we're not going to know, people, based on any sort of preseason action. They're not showing anything in the preseason. Now, you may say offensively, it probably makes sense for the starters and Jaden to go out there for a quarter in a couple of the preseason games and really get in tune, because one of the things that Solak wrote about is that early on, Chicago was struggling to get to the line of scrimmage on time because it was a wordier play. There were wordier checks. Let's see how they handle the preseason offensively. It would be really interesting. Look, you're not going to show game plan stuff, but you may want to get into a rhythm with referees, with an opponent, with a clock, in a stadium with people in it. You may want your quarterback and your offensive coordinator to get into some sort of rhythm that you can't get into in practice or even the joint practices, because these aren't timed things usually. I actually am talking myself into, I want to see the offense on the field in the preseason a little bit. I want my new offensive coordinator to get used to calling plays. He's going to call plays anyway, but I'm talking about calling plays for his starters. I think what I was thinking about after reading these two things earlier this morning was, which of the two am I most confident in? Like, which of the two coordinators, we know so little about them, but which of the two am I most confident in? And when I say most confident in terms of the actual unit performing, it's possible the unit performs well on offense, but we look at it as, man, Jaden performed a Houdini act every week. I mean, the plays that were called, nothing was there. He was always, that could be possible. But 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980, which of the two coordinators do you think it's most likely you're going to feel good about by, let's say, the midpoint of the season? Blau or Jones? 301-230-0980, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Interesting write-ups on Washington's two new coordinators by Ben Solak at ESPN this morning. And yeah, there are some interesting thoughts that he presents. You know, how long David Blau's offense will take to kind of get to where Ben Johnson's offense got to last year with Caleb Williams. Slower starting, but definitely by the end of the year, it was humming. And then how much of Cliff Kingsbury's offense will still remain part of what they do. He discusses more of a marrying of the two systems, Kingsbury and Ben Johnson's system. And then as it relates to Durante Jones, is this going to be Brian Flores' defense? I think it might be, but he's had so many influences. So we're really not sure what it's going to look like until we get there. That is part of the advantage that Washington will have early in the season because there won't be a specific read from their opponents on what they want to do, how they want to do it. But I'm sure they're going to be guessing Ben Johnson primarily on offense and Brian Flores primarily on defense. That would be my guess. Which of the two do you think by mid-season you're going to feel the best about? Blau or Durante Jones? On one hand, if Solak's right and the offense is a work in progress and it doesn't really hit its stride until midway through the season and doesn't really become dangerous, as he wrote, until the end of the season, by mid-season we may think, I mean, some of you I know, because it's week to week, will, you know, you're jumping off the ship after week one if they only score 14 points and generate 210 yards. And there could be some growing pains with this new offense and with David Blau. And not just the new offense, but even with David Blau as a first-time coordinator. Defensively, with 6, new starters minimum and a Brian Flores scheme, remember, we're going to have last year to compare it to, and I can't imagine it's going to look worse. But I'm going to say that because of the confidence that I have in the person I believe is the best player on the team and the position that he plays, quarterback, I'm going to say that I think I'm going to feel best about David Blau by the midpoint of the season. I hope I feel great about both of them, but I'm going to guess that it's a pretty quick turnaround to inexperience, not sure what we're going to get, to, yeah, no, this is the right coordinator. This is the right play caller. He's got the right quarterback, obviously, and it's a really good fit. I'm going to say Blau. What about you, Max?
So it's interesting because right now I'm going to agree with you on David Blau because largely because of Jaden Daniels being in the third year of his career, and everything that I've heard about him and dealing with this offense is that he has mastered it and got it down very, very quickly and is taking command of the offense and leading this group. But as time goes on, I really do think that the defense is something that I'm going to be really confident in because of all the additions that we've made. Now I think that's probably going to take some time to kind of, gel together and all that. But I mean, we completely overhauled everything, like from linebacker on, and it's been I think that's going to be a huge boost to our leadership. And I mean, boosting from Bobby Wagner's tough, but a lot of it is going to be just speed and play related because Chenal, Styles, they're going to be moving around like crazy, and it's going to be a huge just addition in terms of athleticism. So I could definitely see the defense coming on towards the mid part of the season and becoming a lot more confident in that.
We do have this up as our Waldorf Honda poll question of the day. It all starts with a click, waldorfhonda.com. But call your shot. Which Commanders coordinator are you going to feel most confident about by midseason? Blau or Durante Jones? Stan, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, I feel that within 2 or 3 years, man, you don't need new coordinators on both sides of the ball. I think these guys are going to be so good that they'll have their own teams within 2 to 3 years. The most underrated defense in the history of pro football was the Atlanta Falcons in the late 70s. They had a defensive coordinator by the name of Jerry Glanville.
Yeah, they blitzed the hell out of teams.
And I think with the way that they're building this team up, man, it's going to be all-out blitz, man. They're going to put so much pressure on the quarterback. The defense is going to carry the load, I think, for the first half of the season. I think the offense will come along.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting comp because they were one of the first teams where the expression was you live by the blitz, you die by the blitz, because they blitz so much with Jerry Glanville in Atlanta. And the Brian Flores defenses, wherever he's been, have been similar. I think that the one difference, and I think that the interesting thing or the fun thing to watch about a Brian Flores defense is what happens pre-snap. They just don't typically give you any clue as to what they're in pre-snap. We're going to find that out real quickly. Say that again.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, now.
Me too. Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it as well. I think, honestly, that first game in Philadelphia, the first few defensive possessions, you're going to know based on the chaos pre-snap. If there's chaos, if it looks chaotic, it's Brian Flores' scheme. If it doesn't look as chaotic, it's a blended with something else that he's had, or maybe with Quinn input. But I don't think Quinn's input. I think this is going to be a Durante Jones show. I do. Bob in Ocean City, which of the two coordinators by midseason do you think you'll feel most confident in?
All right, Kevin, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
All right, guys, this is what I see. With Jaden Daniels under center, since he hadn't done it 20,000 times, and I'm talking 20,000 times, the play action pass, that's going to take time to get better, and a lot of time. You're going to see the misstep. You're going to see the stepping on the guard, stepping on the center. Just different things that you normally don't see on a quarterback that's done that 20,000 times. So for that reason, I'm going to say this. It's the speed of the defense now. We have tacklers will be in a blitz run defense. That's what Minnesota showed up last couple years. They blitzed on running downs and ran into the guy 2 yards behind, and the guy came out of nowhere. You're like, why did that guy do that? You look at the film and going, why did that safety come up? Because that was his responsibility.
Right.
So I just think overall team speed, defense, and tackling ability in the front seven. And then when they bring a guy down, hey, man, we might go with a knockout 10 and blitz 9, Kevin. This guy is blitz happy. Show it early. Show it often. It's not how you start,
I mean, look,
Kevin.
too. I mean, you're going to be facing in week one a new offensive coordinator and a new offense in Philadelphia that may take some time. So disrupt it as much as you can. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Let's go to Philip in Texas. Philip, go ahead.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I feel good about Blau. And I'll start with this. With Blau, just the fact that he knows Jaden already, that's a plus. You know, it's in my opinion, it's hard to start from scratch and getting to know your athlete, right?
Sure.
Two, you're going to see a lot more running style. I'm a run-first guy. And to this day, to win, you need to run the ball. And I think hitting rock bottom from last year, that's going to make them, flip it. Heavy offensive, heavy tight end sets, which I love. The more bodies up at the line of scrimmage, the better.
Yep.
It's going to come down to protection, and I think they're going to get that done. And we have Jaden. We have our guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, Philip, your first point is a good one, and I appreciate the call. I think that unlike Durante Jones, David Blau has major familiarity with everybody, most notably the quarterback. He's been here for the quarterback's 2 seasons. So that will make the transition, I think, a lot easier. Now, Durante Jones could have been here and it wouldn't have mattered because of how much the personnel's changed defensively. I mean, even if Joe Witt Jr. was still the defensive coordinator, it would be a new thing because he's got 6 to 7 new starters, more likely than not 8, new contributors defensively. They've completely turned over the defensive roster to something completely different than last year. I mean, it'll look similar with a Deron Payne and a Kinlaw and an Amos coming back and a Sandra still, et cetera. But for the most part, we're going to see new people. And when you have that many new people, that typically takes some time to develop some chemistry. There is a lot that, offensively, new system might take time. Defensively, so many new players and a new system might take some time. But I got news for you. They don't have a lot of time. They start at Philly, at Dallas, and then Seattle before going to London. They got to be ready to roll. The way they treat the preseason, I think this can get over-discussed and overrated, but it's still a conversation when we get to that first preseason game every single year. And this first preseason game will follow, midweek joint practices with the Miami Dolphins. But on Friday night, August 14th against Miami, or the following Saturday at Detroit against the Lions, you're not giving away game plan, but you're going to want to get into a rhythm, I would think, with two new coordinators calling plays with more of their starters on the field as true rehearsal, as a true dress rehearsal. It's one thing if you got veteran coordinators, veteran players that have played with each other. That'll be an interesting conversation a month and a half from now when we get there as to what they decide to do and what we think they should they should do, because there is some benefit. I can't imagine that there's zero benefit for a Durante Jones or a David Blau, two men who have never called plays in a football game. There has to be some benefit to doing it in a live game, no matter the fact that it's a preseason game. You can't replicate that in practice. An actual stadium, actual referees, actual play clock that you're looking at, actual game clock, actual sidelines. All of that, I think Quinn will take into consideration. And I'd predict right now that we see more starters for a longer period of time in these preseason games than we have in the first 2 years of Quinn. Ben Standig next.
everybody? It's your boy Beaky. I'm back in action and back on tour this fall. Go to www.commanders.com to get your tickets and watch us rock out.
The best video he's put out by far. Fun, funny, not attacking his former employer. A little bit of a sense of humor on the cat, Brandon Ayuk. Ben Standig's with us as he is every Monday and Wednesday. Monday and Friday. I'm sure we'll have another video out here shortly. But did you like the last one? That's my favorite one.
At this point, I think I'm immune to his charms at the moment. But sure, I mean, at least.
Yeah. That was the most charming, though.
Yeah, no, sure. Look, who knows? We don't know what's going. Maybe he's going to be part of the. He's going to help Mark Klaus on the ticket side, help promote the new stadium.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. Where are you on these on the Brandon Ayuk question these days?
I mean, I think I'm same place I've been for a while. I think you're there too. It's just like I just don't. In the movie Total Recall when Schwarzenegger is figuring out that he has this like other life, and then there's like the video of him and the bad guy talking to the current version of him explaining what the con is. That's what I'm almost waiting for. That like Ayuk and Peters and Daniels are just going to put up a video one day. We've just been having fun with you guys. It's all good. Other than that, I just don't know what to think anymore. I just, as everybody has said, I don't know how this is helping the cause, and it just makes it harder and harder for me to understand why they'd want to take the risk. But, like I said, I've been here for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question actually is the risk. What is the risk, even if he's, not all there? My biggest issue, and the reason I kind of came around, is the last couple of videos were just they really reflected somebody who's not very serious about what he should be serious about, which is if he really wants to be here, take the actions that are out there that he could take to get here. His action, or really it's his inaction, that is the most disappointing part, because we didn't hear a thing from him. We were talking before June, early June. We don't even know where he is. His agent doesn't even know where he is. Nobody knows anything. That would have been a better environment for him to be released in and then signed in. But the video, deluge of the last few weeks just highlights the fact that he's not serious right now anyway about doing what it would take to actually be on Washington's roster. He hasn't even, according to reporting, filed the application for reinstatement with the commissioner, which he needs to do. I mean, if you really want to play in Washington, if you really want to market those tickets with you on the team, how about taking that first step and then presenting yourself to the 49ers like a real man, like a real professional would, that's real serious. That's my biggest issue is he's leaving any reasonable thinking person with the idea that he's not serious about this because there's been no action, and he has actions he can take.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, even the people who want to defend him and, dump on the 49ers and this, that, and the other, yeah, maybe he doesn't care about the money, but if you want, I mean, this is a business. This is a job, just like we all have jobs and such. That, like, if you want out and you're willing to throw away the money, cool. Then tell the 49ers you can have the money, but let me go. He didn't do that. He just stopped showing up. The idea that him not talking as a bonus, I mean, not really. Going MIA is not solving the problem. You actually have to communicate.
Yeah, no, you have to take action. Yes, you do, with your employer directly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and, also I was texting with a former player about this the other day, and they're like, look, it can be hard if you are a player who gets into this mode where you're just, constantly in this attack against your former employer. Well, what happens when something goes wrong with the new plays? Are you easily going to keep that part of you shelved when you've just been in that mode for all this time. And I do think, like, when we talk about the risk, I know people will say, oh, big deal, sign him to 1 year, not a lot of money, who cares? Well, okay. Well, what happens when the ball 2 games in a row doesn't go his way? Is he going to yell at the quarterback who's his friend? Is he going to tell his friend who's the quarterback to tell the offensive coordinator, hey, what are we doing here? I'm not saying he will, but you can't rule anything out in this circumstance. And the last thing anybody here in any capacity wants is Jaden Daniels to be compromised. I mean, not just because he's coming off the year that they had and, you know, they need to be better, but just why put this guy into this position? So, again, maybe Jaden Daniels doesn't feel that way, but Ayuk is clearly doing everything he can to get here for him. I don't, you know, as much as he and Adam Peters may have a relationship, it's clearly for the quarterback. So, you know, if he's going to feel a certain way about it all, then that's not good. So to me, just the more this goes on, the bigger the risk that becomes. And ultimately, like, I don't know any Commanders fan who would say that's worth what we're seeing here. So, you know, I just, you know, again, at this point, I'm just sort of feel like I'm immune to the whole thing. I only talk about it, as I'm sure you do, because he keeps invoking the Commanders in the discussion. So it's like, all right, well, I guess we have to keep mentioning it. You know, when he says things like, you know, release me and I'll sign with the Commanders tomorrow, that's not a real thing. I mean, maybe it is, but, you know, I mean, like, it's not a fact. It's just him saying that. So we have to address it. So, yeah, sure. Well, whatever he's going to keep doing. I mean, I think the thing is, you know, training camp is not for another month, give or take. So what is he going to keep doing this for the next 4 weeks? Are we going to keep getting Instagram content from him all this time? You know, that doesn't seem like a good time to me.
No, I think the conversation that you had with somebody, you know, in the league is a conversation many people around the league have had, which is, you know, kind of the there for the God, grace of God go I. You know, he's already proven that he'll go scorched earth on you if it doesn't work out well. And by the way, the odds now heavily stacked that eventually he's going to go scorched earth on his next team and the team after that as well. That appears to be who he is, or at least now. Maybe it's just immaturity and he'll grow up. But the part of that you then get into and extrapolate out as to, okay, well, now you've put me, Brandon Ayuk, I'm Adam Peters, into a position where I really have to sell you now to my owner, to my ownership group, to my head coach, to everybody in the building, because you've created such an absolute, you know, the shenanigans make you appear to a lot of people to be a bit off. What I meant by not saying anything, of course, he should have been more professional. Of course, he should have gone in and gotten the knee checked and not thrown away $30 million. I mean, that's bad judgment at the very least. But you've gone from, yeah, we're going to take a flyer on this guy where it didn't work out in San Francisco to we'd like to take a flyer on this guy from San Francisco, but now I have to sell you Josh Harris and Mitch Rales on he's not going to be terrible for our locker room, our organization, or our community. And that's not chess over checkers. I think you and I've talked about this. I have felt for a while now that it was more likely than not going to happen. I think you felt the same way. We've agreed that, right? I think the chances that he's hurt that with a lot of this stuff are better than 50-50. That questions that have to be answered, questions now have to be answered inside Ashburn that maybe didn't have to be answered a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if they're going to have an introductory press conference for Brandon Ayuk. Something tells me they won't. But at whatever point Adam Peters would have to address it, and Dan Quinn as well, instead of it just being, look, like when they traded for Marshawn Lattimore, obviously there were picks involved, but look, Lattimore had some questions, the injury,
right.
Had he, worn out his welcome with New Orleans, whatever. But okay, at least you understood it from a football context. They needed a corner. This guy's been one of the better ones, other than he was injured at that moment. He was still playing, et cetera. There were some questions, but they were at least in the realm of football questions. This is veering towards something else. And again, I've said this before. I don't know how I would ask this or phrase this or whatever, but you can't keep telling us here are the boxes of what it means to be a Commander, and then trot this guy out here after everything he's done and keep pointing to that. Like, show me which boxes he's checking. The answer would be none, one, I don't know. Like the compromise that they're having to do here is significantly greater because of all this. And again,
yes,
if he had just showed up, then San Francisco would have released him essentially, and we wouldn't have had what's gone on here now for this past month or post June 1.
That's what I'm saying.
So
and
he could
you wouldn't have had
this.
as many questions to answer on the back end of this.
Right.
Yes.
The only questions we had at that point were essentially, hey, what's his health?
How's the knee?
How's his knee? Does he want to really play? Okay, guess he wants to play. Maybe he's answered that, but like the rest of it is a huge deal. And yes, I mean, again, I understand that when you talk about culture and what it means to be a commander, I understand to a degree these things are. I think they believe it. I think this is something that they preach to their players, but also it is a little bit of a selling point that any company does, right, to explain what it means to be part of this great organization. But it just becomes harder when you then bring in somebody who is doing all the things that you're suggesting would be not part of that, and now you're going to tell me no, he's fine. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I
would suggest that the lack of action is an indication that, you have to ask the question, does he really want to play? If he really wanted to be here, he could have taken action already to get that process going, and reportedly he has not done that. We'll see what happens with the beginning of training camp. If he's applied for reinstatement at that point. But I think that question's very much in play, and I think you're 100% right. I mean, you've got to question at this point, what you're bringing into your, revamped culture. Look, none of this would be a conversation if, A, he didn't have tantalizing talent. Obviously, this wouldn't even be a thing. But B, it wouldn't be a question. It would be for a lot of people because of the health. And a lot of people didn't even think he was that good. I think people who just pay attention to our team versus the rest of the league weren't really sure how good he was. But he's made it problematic for not just, the debate going on among fans and media members. By the way, part of that is that he's had very little support from people close to the situation or in the game. Very little. In fact, I mean, TJ Hushmanzada, his mentor, basically said, beware. George Kittle said, basically, beware. Dante Whitner said, beware of what you're getting. There have been a lot of warnings from other people, not just his videos. But yeah, it would have been so easy had he just gone in and said, I'm applying for reinstatement. My knee's better. I'm healthy. I'm ready to play football. And then the 49ers would have had to make a decision. Are they going to keep him? Are they going to have him in training camp? Are they going to risk him getting injured where then all of a sudden they're actually on the hook for, the guaranteed for injury part of the contract? And he hasn't done any of that. Hasn't done any of that by all accounts. That's what he needs to do.
And also, we still don't know exactly what set it off that led him to stop showing up, which is why the 49ers.
Richard Sherman says the Super Bowl target number.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say Richard Sherman. I saw the part of the clip of him talking about it, saying that the deal is if you can rehab on your own, but if you do, which is fine, you have to show up 4 days before the start of camp, where everybody else just has to show up the eve because they want to, take a long look and see what you're up to and whatever. And if you don't do that, then this is where you start to have problems. So, if that's the issue, again, fine. If he thinks that he should have gotten more targets at Super Bowl, or he doesn't like where his locker is located, or he thinks he should have a better parking space, whatever it is, go with your agent and say, hey, this is not acceptable for us. We'd like to get out of here. And then, if you're really willing to throw the money away, say, okay, and we will will allow you to keep this as long as you let us go. All of that, I mean, we can question it in another way, but that's all reasonable. That's how negotiations work. Go ahead, do that. But this is just a whole other, it's just hard to understand what is happening. I know we've been saying this now over and over again. But by the way, I do think there's something else to consider here, and that is, obviously we keep talking about the start of training camp as to when maybe we see some action here, because that's when would be the next opportunity for him to show up and force San Francisco's hand. Well, there is another time marker here, and that is when other free agents who are available start getting signed, right? I mean, if right now there's not a lot of urgency from anybody's side. Like the veterans guys,
right,
they didn't want to show up for mini camp and things like that, so they're just waiting. And at this point, there's no urgency, right? So, but at some point there will be. At some point, we'll start hearing Stephon Diggs is visiting so and so and talking to so and so, and same with Keenan Allen or whoever else is out there. Well, if Washington is willing to wait because they know they're going for Brandon Ayuk, then it doesn't matter. But if they're not, and they do decide, hey, we would like to bring at least another veteran, experienced guy for whatever, then that has to come sooner. So, maybe that's not a definitive answer, but we'll probably get a better feel once those guys start.
When do you think that'll be? I mean, Stephon Diggs is posting videos, and I was going to ask you next about, I think that's where I am right now. It's like, this guy doesn't seem very serious about playing football at this point. If he were serious, he would have already applied for reinstatement. He would have shown up for OTAs. It seems like he's more interested in trying to be, a social media entertainer. So if that's the case, Diggs is ready to play. He has played recently. He doesn't have the upside that Ayuk has, in my opinion, for not only this year, but the future. But at what point do you think Diggs starts to talk to teams, or we start to hear about Diggs talking to teams?
Yeah, I mean, the conversations have been going on, for some time. Once his situation cleared up with the legal system, I know that there's at least general contact, with teams with him, with his camp. But like Von Miller signed like right before, a day or two before the start of camp last year, and Dan Quinn told us the other day that those were conversations that had been going on for weeks. It wasn't just a hey, we looked at the mini camp practices and decided we needed help. They had been talking. So, it could literally be days before the start of camp. I mean, I guess obviously if one team says to him, hey, we would like you, but we can't, we get nervous if you don't go, so we're ready to do this. So maybe it triggers something quicker, but, it may not be until a few days before training camp, before the marketplace, at least at the top of the market, gets going.
I mean, do you think, the one thing when I think about Diggs is he may not be a good fit for them. Like he's maybe a little bit more possession receiver than he is deep threat like he used to be at this age. They may see, what they have as comparable. I think that's a reach. Whereas Ayuk is an outlier talent-wise right now and at his age if he's physically healthy. But do you think that, is it possible that there's just no interest in Diggs because they don't see like massive incremental value?
Yeah, I think that's completely plausible. We've talked about how if they're going to use more 12 and 13 personnel, then that would logically mean, it's not like back in the John Riggins era where that would mean two tight ends out on the outside of the tackles and or have the H back and then just like run block. In this case, it would be more likely Bates in line, Chikakonkwo lining outside to some degree. So if that's the case, and you only have to have one other receiver on the field in a two tight end set, then, I understand that Diggs hypothetically might be better individually than everybody else they have, but don't you want Antonio Williams to get on the field? Don't you want to see Jalen Lane or, Traylon Burks, whatever. So, like, I think at that point, maybe it isn't as big of a deal because if it's not going to just solely be he's the guy definitively, he's just one of the pieces. They do have a lot of pieces. So, yeah, it's very possible they're just not as interested in him as we all may think. And for the most part, I think I would be okay with that. Now, if this was last year where you're going 11 personnel all the time, that might be different because now – like, well, now you have a lot of spare parts. Here you're only looking at having to have maybe one spare part, one rotation, and that therefore he maybe is not of as much of interest as we all might think.
All right. We're talking to Ben Standig, of course, at Ben Standig on X. Ben covers the team and writes about it on his Substack. I would urge everybody to subscribe. It's just a couple of dollars a month. It's totally worth it. He has done depth chart 1.0, where every position right now stands a month before training camp. We'll get to that in a moment. But I was talking about this story that Ben Solak wrote for ESPN.com this morning. I don't know if you saw it, but I knew that there was a lot of turnover in coordinators, and I even guessed at one point without really doing the math on it that this has to be one of the biggest turnovers in coordinators in NFL history. It is, in fact, the most turnover in offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators in one off season in NFL history. 35 new coordinators, 21 new offensive coordinators, 14 new defensive coordinators. And he wrote about the 10 most intriguing, essentially. And both Blau and Durante Jones were among the top 10 that were most interesting with the most questions. Did you read this or not?
I have not.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is in writing about Blau, he writes that the challenge here is marrying two systems, the Kingsbury system and the Ben Johnson system. And then one of the big takeaways is it took a while just for the Ben Johnson system in Chicago for Caleb Williams to get comfortable. They struggled to get to the line of scrimmage on time early in the season. They had a lot of those growing pains. But he writes, look, if Blau can land the plane and blend these two offenses, there's a chance Washington's offense is one of the league's most dangerous down the home stretch. This might be the coolest thing we see all season. Marrying, I think, implies the offense is going to be 50% Kingsbury, 50% Ben Johnson. Do you agree with that?
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
Look, obviously this is all a guessing game by all of us to what degree, percentages, and, even Durante Jones, we're all assuming he's just going to bring Brian Flores. And he's like, well, I've also worked for Marvin Lewis and other coaches. So, who knows what spin each of them is going to put on it. But in this case, no, I think Quinn made it pretty clear. They're not looking to keep the Cliff Kingsbury offense. If they did, they would have kept Cliff Kingsbury. They're looking to do something different, and obviously just simply going under center more and huddling, that itself is radically different. Now, can you keep some of the pass patterns? Sure. I'm sure there are plays where Jaden Daniels, especially in shotgun, says, hey, I really like this. David Blau is not an idiot. He's going to say, cool, we can keep some of that. I mean, David, and also, we all understand that David Blau, this is a big mystery because he has not, he's barely been a coach, let alone a coordinator, but he has been here the last 2 years. He isn't coming in as a person, as a personality, completely cold the way Ben Johnson did with Chicago. They've had successes together. They've seen what's worked, what hasn't, and I'm sure that gives him a big leg up. Again, we haven't seen the experience. We have to see him implement everything. What's he going to do? When the game is live and it's 3rd and 7, what do you do? But the implementation, all those aspects, I'm not really that worried about that part because, again, I don't think they're going to do it. It's not like a 50-50 marriage here. It's more just like, here, what are the things that we want to keep? Cool. Now let's go throw out the rest and come over here with this. And, he's been working with Jaden on this. Again, I'm not saying that Ben Johnson was more of a, like veering towards like a traditional coach, like dictatorship scenario, like here's what we're doing. But it was probably more that than it will be here because David Blau is, coming in completely fresh to the whole thing, but also he's already been here. He has the relationship. They don't have to my way or the highway, the whole situation.
All right. You put out your first depth chart. How many will you have before the final cut down?
I don't know. Honestly,
8, 9. We'll go to double digits.
No. Okay. Honestly, this could be the one because I was like,
no. You're going to do this 5 more times.
No. I'll do 53s 5 more times, but it was too early to do that. I figure this is more like instead of saying who's going to make the team, this is like, okay, let's look at the people who are trying to make the team and try to assess.
What was the hardest position to create a depth chart for?
I think the receiver. Not even factoring in the Ayuk aspect. again, like, is anybody going to emerge as more than just part of a committee? Is anybody going to be able to step up? And look, maybe that is Antonio Williams, the guy with, the blank slate that we just don't know about him in the NFL level. Again, it's not like Jalen Lane, was able to show a ton last year for a variety of reasons. Is it possible? He's got great speed, and maybe he's a guy that can emerge. I know there's people out there excited about what Treylon Burks can do coming in here from the start of the year rather than halfway through, and he's far removed from the injuries and things like that, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's also the how many are going to be kept, who's making the team. So I just think the receiver situation as a whole, and I would also just sort of combine it with the other skill set position at running back. Is Bill going to definitely be the lead? We haven't seen his work in the passing game because he was out. So, and also, they just haven't been doing as much. So what does that look like? If he's able to show he can block and be a viable receiver, then maybe he is getting, 60%, 65% of the work. If not, then we're looking at, is Rachaad White, is it just sort of a 50-50 with Katron Allen, Jeremy McNichols filling in? So I think that, those situations could be drastically different. If we're talking sort of fantasy football-ish, wouldn't know what exactly to tell people right now because of those things are more up in the air. Whereas like tight end, I think it's pretty clear who's the one, who's the two, who's the three, and the only real question is Colson Yankoff the four again. So that's different than these other groups where the hierarchy feels like it's kind of all over the place.
Just give me an idea of what you think the starting secondary, 4 DBs, let's just assume they're in some sort of base defense with 3D linemen or 4D linemen, if it's 34, 4 linebackers. Who are the 4 DBs when they go out on the football field for the first time against Philadelphia in September?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume Trey Amos is one corner. I'm going to assume Mikey Sanders still is another one. Obviously, Nick Cross at safety. And, until further notice, I would say Will Harris feels like sort of the safest bet. Obviously, they talked last year about when he went out, how that, hurt their communication in the secondary. He's like the more natural free safety, it feels like. I mean, I think Saquon Martin has more upside, but we saw how his year kind of went. So I would say Harris would be the 4th guy right now, unless they show us some other type of variation.
All right. Anything else? You have any kind of post-draft NBA draft thoughts that you want to share? Because Ben's also doing a Wizards Substack as well.
Yeah, it's on the same site, but yes, I'm talking more Wizards now these days. Look, I think the Bonsa was the right call. I think the Trae Young conversation is the more fascinating, and I had, like everybody else, when I first heard it, I'm like, whoa, wait, what? I thought we were looking at like 3 for like 120 or 140, and conventionally speaking, this seems like an overpay. But the more I've sat and thought about it, I think people are way overreacting, especially when I hear anybody say it's like the worst contract in the league. I mean, at the end of the day, it's sort of like saying if you don't pay, like if the Colts, even if the Colts have let Daniel Jones go, right, coming off the injury, Daniel Jones being Daniel Jones, tell me who they're going with a quarterback. But you can't just say don't pay that guy. Cool. Then what comes next? Well, the same thing here. Cool. Don't pay Trae Young. Who's your point guard? The entire point of this whole season is not to win a title, which is why people are getting in their head confused, because they think they're looking at Trae Young's money relative to if you're trying to be to win it all. They need somebody to help these kids take the next level. Again, we could argue, is Trae Young the best person? Well, they don't get to pick anybody they want. They can only pick the players who are available. He was available. They made the trade. Didn't cost them anything. And the next 2 years, they're not paying anybody anything. The money doesn't matter at all. In fact, they actually have to reach, the salary cap floor. So I think people are way overreacting. I'm not saying Trae Young is going to be the greatest guy, but in 3 years, when everybody is, when DeBonce has been in the league 2 years and the other guys have, we have a better feel for who they are, then we can assess where Trae Young is. And at that point, his contract is easily tradable. So I think people are just way
not only that, at that point, the contract, right now, just so people understand, at $53 million per year, that's the 12th highest. It's not top 5. It's not top 3. It's the 12th highest average annual. And by the time we get to that point, it'll probably be the 20th or the 22nd highest average annual. I'm with you. I thought look, it's too much if there wasn't actually somebody else willing to pay it. But if somebody else was willing to pay it, Brooklyn, Chicago, take your pick. I want him on the team next year, and so do they. That's why they traded for him. Thanks for doing this. I'll talk to you this weekend, I'm sure.
Pleasure, man. Have a good one.
Ben Standig, everybody. Chris Russell is going to join me next. Chris Russell's with us. So yesterday, I walk into I play golf and I walk into the men's grill and two people come up to me immediately saying, "Man, Russell was killing you yesterday." I'm like, "What was he saying?" It was all about Brandon Ayuk. So they didn't get into detail. I just immediately texted you and said,
Right.
"Are you available to come on with me today at 12:35?"
No.
Tell me what you were doing.
So I got to clarify. I was not killing you.
Well, that's what they said.
I was using the point that you suddenly flipped from being an Ayuk guy and wanting them to take this opportunity to, like within the last 24 hours that I said this during my show yesterday, that you had become anti them doing this. And I said,
okay.
you know, like, and I made the reference that you woke up in the Mojave Desert and you found like, you know, like
some water,
some eureka or whatever. And you all of a sudden.
Well, I'm not completely there. Let me just make sure. So maybe you can rip me during this segment.
It wasn't about ripping you.
I'm waffling. I'm not exactly there.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the combination of the Richard Sherman thing with the back-to-back videos the other night. It just had me thinking, this guy's not serious about playing football. So let's move on to maybe doing something with Diggs if the team's interested.
Fine.
But I'm going to tell you what I've been saying all along, and that is whatever they do, I'm actually going to trust it because I do trust this particular group. So if they end up signing him, I'm going to assume they checked off every box, including every psychological profile box. And they're going to have a chance to have a major upgrade offensively with Brandon Ayuk. Because, Chris, you watch the rest of the league. A lot of our fans don't. At the end of 23, he was a top 10 receiver and climbing. Doesn't mean he's going to be that anymore. But if there's a chance that he's going to be that, he's exactly what this team needs. But they've got to check off all the other boxes. I've always said I'd love him to be on this roster. He'd be perfect for this roster, but I got to trust in the people that will have all the information. I just think recently the information that's out there might even be turning them away from him.
Well,
we don't,
that's my hope. I mean, if they weren't already, but here's
you
what
don't like the player though?
I don't know what the player is. I don't know if he's healthy.
Well, you know
I know what George Kittle said, but that was 8 months ago, 9 months ago. I don't know if he's
but you know what he was before he got injured.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. If he's anywhere close to that one great year, then yes, of course.
Well, he had a good year in 22 also.
Fine. Great. I guess great versus good, whatever. Of course, I understand the football fit if he's right from 2 years ago. Remember, and I think you've pointed this out, he wasn't even that good in the 7 or so games leading up to the injury. But that neither here nor there. Kevin, here was my point. My point all along was I didn't need all these social media videos to come out for me to be convinced that Brandon Ayuk was not a good fit in the building, in the culture, in the brotherhood, in the locker room, on this team. And I very much worry about some of the things you pointed out while I was driving in insane traffic trying to get here, which is that, you know, you worry about him complaining about how many balls he gets, how many targets he gets, how many looks on third down he gets. Richard Sherman said something similar about the Super Bowl, whatever. I worry that this could turn into an A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts thing, that even the guy that has long defended him, long advocated for him as his best friend, he could turn his back against. And I don't want any part of that if I'm the Washington Commanders. And that's just one small part of this.
You know, remember that the environment that he would presumably be in would be far different than the one he was in San Francisco and the one that A.J. Brown's been in Philadelphia, because you could literally say to him, you're gone, and there's no pain. There's no, you know, once that stuff starts to happen, he out of here.
The only pain that you have to deal with is clean up on aisle. Let's just call it 11.
Look, right? If they feel like there's going to be a cleanup on aisle 6 required if it doesn't work out because he's really messed with Jaden and he's put Jaden in a bad spot, all of that, then that's a big box going in. If they can't check it, you don't sign him. But before this video, you know, deluge of the last few weeks, I want to win. And what happened in San Francisco certainly from afar looks more him than team from
Mhm.
my perspective.
Mhm.
And all of that would raise flags for sure. But that's for them to figure out,
Yeah.
not us, because
You-
we
you-
don't have all the information.
You and I know how prickly, difficult, what have you, the Shanahans can be. That's Kyle and Mike. Okay, because Mike still obviously is
Yes, he
influential
is.
in the 49ers organization and in his son's mind, and I'm sure with John Lynch. We all know how difficult they can make your life if you don't do as they ask and if as they expect. My thing would be, look, they can be again these football ogres, if you will, right, and not easy to deal with. But if you do what you're supposed to do, Kev, if you just do what you're supposed to do, show up, check in, whatever they're asking you to do, not be a clown, not be a distraction, not be a problem, not be afraid to walk into the building, not wear the wrong shorts or the wrong uniform at practice, whatever all the things were. If you just do that, you and I know two pretty fair guys, right? In Mike and Kyle Shanahan, if you do the right thing. Now, that's a big if, but if you do the right thing. They didn't pay him $130 million, and $50 million of it guaranteed. They didn't do that to lose games, to hurt Brandon Ayuk. They did it to help Brandon Ayuk, and more importantly, as you pointed out, to help the 49ers because he's a really good wide receiver. And yet, not only did he turn his back on them and not do whatever he was supposed to do, and okay, the injury is the injury, the football, right? But also on top of that, I believe, this is me, even though people haven't said it publicly, George Kittle kind of intimated it became a major, I believe, kind of like lingering problem that was on everybody's mind in that building. Is he going to show up? When is he going to be here? Is he going to come into the locker room? Is he just going to be in the rehab room? Is he just going to be in the sauna? It just became an issue. And I believe it will become an issue here, good or bad. Like, he could be a choir boy, Kev, right? And everything could be great. And the focus isn't going to be on Terry or Chig or Bill, maybe not even Jaden. The focus from every reporter that walks into that facility will be on Brandon Ayuk, good or bad. And to me, I don't want that when I've rid this organization of people of that same mentality for as long as they were here. And you know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, look, this has been an odd saga. I mean, and there have been many weird sagas in the NFL's offseason over the years for not just our team, but just the league in general. This one has gotten really, really strange. And I had somebody say, well, we're going to find out who the actual, clown in this was at some point, either the 49ers or Ayuk. And I said to this was a friend of mine, I said, no, he's the clown. Yeah. I mean, he's the one that literally threw away between $30 and $40 million by not showing up. That's clownish.
Correct.
And it's terrible judgment. And that would be the one red flag that would be on this whole thing before the video deluge. Look, to me, like I had people reaching out to me to say, oh, you're going to be influenced by social media. No, it's not about what he's doing, what he's actually doing on social media. It's not like emptying money out of a backpack in a closet means he's going to run 4.7 instead of 4.3.
Right.
But it's what it reflects. And what it reflects more than anything else is that he's been more interested in bashing his current team, the 49ers, than football itself.
Yeah.
And that's a reveal on character. That's a true colors kind of a reveal, going scorched earth the way he's gone. And teams will say, that's us in 2 years if we sign him, just so everybody understands what we're getting into. But more than anything else, Chris, it's beyond the immaturity on Instagram, which, any adult is going to recognize this as immaturity.
Yes.
It's the fact that he hasn't taken any action.
Yeah.
If he really wants this, apply for reinstatement, show up.
Yep.
Go face to face with Lynch and Kyle and ownership and tell them what you want and show them that you're healthy. but he hasn't done any of that. By
Kevin,
all
there's
accounts.
emotional.
That's got to come next.
Yeah, there's emotional immaturity, and then there's business and common sense immaturity. And I think Brandon Ayuk is getting an A+ in both of those categories.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Okay,
no doubt. There's no chess over
Right.
checkers here, people. Just so you understand,
this
is not with, and especially, and Chris mentioned this, and we around here know the Shanahans a bit. This isn't going to get them to say, "Oh my God, we can't take this anymore. Let's release him right now."
Right.
That's not now.
No.
And by the way, they're going to force him to apply for reinstatement.
Correct.
They're going to make sure he does the proper things, and then we'll see what happens. They could still hold on to him. There would be some risk in holding on to him through a training camp if he were to get hurt again.
They could also fail his physical. Like people haven't thought about this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that they will and do it on purpose, but they could find something. How many times?
Well, you can't fake failing a physical.
No,
it would have to be legit.
You have to prove you have to prove something.
Yeah.
But remember, when we just found out about this with Max Crosby, right? Max Crosby says, "I'm great. I'm doing that." The Ravens make the trade, and then they fail the physical. Right now, I'm sure there were legitimate reasons. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't with Brandon Ayuk. But the bottom line is I think the 49ers could orchestrate something like that. And then furthermore, think about this. If the NFLPA and if his agent Ryan Williams, who we haven't heard from, and nobody knows if he,
if he's
anybody
even
working on his behalf, who is going to go to bat for this guy? If they fail a physical, if they put him on if he suffered some sort of setback in their opinion and in their evaluation, and I don't know if he has, and they put him on an NFI list where he doesn't get paid, right? Say he reports whatever. Then who's going to go to bat for him? Is the NFLPA, which hasn't touched him? Is his agent? Somebody brought up on my show yesterday that Mama Jaden could become his new agent.
So we're running out of time here, and I wanted to get to something because Max read me your tweet from earlier, and I have it in front of me from yesterday.
Okay.
By the way, but let me just give you, I've given you this advice many times over the 15 plus years that we've known each other.
Don't tweet.
Stop getting into these Twitter things with these people. It's such a waste of time. It's not the real world.
I know.
But when you tweet it out, this isn't going to be a popular thing to say, but I've never hid from the truth. I will be super disappointed in Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, Josh Harrison, Jaden Daniels if they bring Brandon Ayuk into the Commanders. I won't just disagree with it. It's officially turn my back time. What are you going to do if they sign Brandon Ayuk?
So you are part of the infamous Deshaun Jackson proclamation.
I was reminded of that this morning.
Yes.
You said you were going to quit if they signed Deshaun Jackson.
And you can ask Chuck Sapienza, our former boss on this station.
Was he ready to take your resignation letter?
He refused to take it. I submitted it.
Is that what happened?
He refused to take it.
Okay.
And everybody still blames me for it. But either way.
Well, you could have just walked out.
So
you didn't have to.
That's
he
fair.
didn't have to accept the resignation for you to walk out.
I think he needed to accept it. But anyway.
I don't think so.
Anyway, Kev.
All right. What does this mean, Christopher?
Yeah. Here's what I would say. Turning my back is a figurative turn. It's not a literal turn. It's I can't root and support for what this team is all about and what they say publicly about the brotherhood and about commander and all this stuff. I can't do that. I can't do that if you're signing Brandon Ayuk. Right. I can't do that. So I would root for guys that I like, guys that I think are good people. I would be bitterly, bitterly disappointed with the Brain Trust and with Jaden because I know Jaden is influential to some degree in this, but I would be most disappointed with Adam Peters. And turning my back is, again, more literal than more
Well,
what is it, more figurative
than
literal?
And turn your back. That doesn't mean anything.
Sorry, I'm not.
What are you
I'm not
willing?
quitting.
What are you willing to do other than just be bitterly disappointed?
I'm not willing.
Is there an offer here?
I'm not willing to do anything.
Okay, I'm just checking.
I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting my
what
job.
What do you think will happen? Let's end
it
on this. What do you think happens?
I think they sign him.
Let me just say, I have thought all along, very, very strong lean that Brandon Ayuk was going to play in Washington in 2026. But I think what he's done here, and this is something Tommy pointed out yesterday with me, he's made it harder for Adam Peters to sell this.
Absolutely.
It would have been much easier had he kept quiet he was somehow released whenever it happened. And he goes to Josh Harris and says, the talent's tantalizing. We cleared him medically.
Absolutely.
The situation with the voided dollars was just ugly. And he had a role in it, the 49, but he's a good kid. But with everything, with him going scorched earth the way he has on his former employer, you're going to have to sell this to the owner. I would imagine that you're not bringing crazy into your building.
Kevin, he shined the
beyond
light.
Crazy.
He shined the light on how emotionally and business-wise immature he really is. If you want that in your building, good luck, have at it.
If immaturity and crazy were disqualifiers in the NFL, most teams wouldn't fill out a full roster. So that doesn't bother me
I think
because of the talent,
Yeah.
because of the tantalizing talent. If you got that on a 1 year prove it deal, but I just think he's making it more difficult on himself now. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
Tell your buddies, by the way, that I did not.
One of my friends said, Russell, the guy that follows you, was killing you.
I was not killing you. You can go back and watch the tape. As a matter of fact, I said I was pleased. I was surprised that you finally changed your opinion. And came
but I'm
over to the right
waffling
side.
right now because I love the players so much. I loved him back in 23, and he would be a massive impact if you got that player from 2023 on their 2026
And I love
season.
you, Kevin, and I would never kill you.
Okay, move on.
Okay.
You got a show next.
Yes.
He's up next. I'll talk to you later. Thanks to everybody who joined us, everybody who called in. I'll be back on Monday. See you, Chris.